刘培元的英文教室正确发音篇从经典演说中练习正确发音我们用念的这个意思就不讲了，翻译不讲了。如果需要，你就去看我这个经典演说篇里面的相对应的欢迎赞助小额赞助。另外，请分别订阅我的15个 YouTube 频道这一篇是甘地的非暴力演说非常有名的 The Doctrine of the Sword 这个 Gandhi。我们念一个句子黑字，一个句子红字绿字呢是动词，比较清楚。In this age of brute force, it is almost impossible for anyone to believe that anyone else could possibly reject the law and find the supremacy of brute force. And so I received anonymous letters advising me that I must not interfere with the progress of non-cooperation, even though popular violence may break out. Others come to me and assuming that secretly I must be plotting violence, inquired when the happy moment for declaring open violence to arrive. They assured me that the English never yield to anything but violence, secret or open. Yet others, I'm informed, believe that I'm the most rascally person living in India because I never give out my real intention, and that they have not a shadow of a doubt that I believe in violence just as much as most people do. Such being hold that the doctrine of the sword has on the majority of mankind, and its success of non-cooperation depends principally on absence of violence during its pendency, and as my views in this matter affect the conduct of a large number of people, I am anxious to state them as clearly as possible. I do believe that where there is only a choice between cowardice and violence, I would advise violence. There's when my eldest son asked me what he should have done had he been present when I was almost fatally assaulted in 1908, whether he should have run away and seen me killed, or whether he should have used his physical force, which he could and had wanted to use, and defend me. I told him that it was his duty to defend me even by using violence. Hence it was that I took part in the Boer War, the so-called Zulu Rebellion, and the late war. Hence also do I advocate training in arms for those who believe in the method of violence. I would rather have India resort to arms in order to defend and honor than that she should in a cowardly manner become or remain a helpless witness to her own dishonor. But I believe that non-violence is infinitely superior to violence. Forgiveness is more manly than punishment. Forgiveness adorns the soldier. But abstinence is forgiveness only when there is a power to punish. It is meaningless when it pretends to proceed from the helpless creature. A mouse hardly forgives cats when it allows itself to be torn to pieces by her. I therefore appreciate the sentiment of those who cry out for the condemned punishment of General Dyer and his ilk. They would tear him to pieces if they could. But I do not believe myself to be a helpless creature. Only I want to use India's and my strength for better purpose. Let me not be misunderstood. Strength does not come from physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable will. An average Zulu is anyway more than a match for an average Englishman in bodily capacity. But he flees from an English boy because he fears a boy's revolver or those who will use it for him. He fears death and is nervously in spite of his burly figure. We in India may in a moment realize that 100,000 Englishmen need not frighten 300 million human beings. A definite forgiveness would therefore mean a definite recognition of our strength. With enlightened forgiveness must come mighty wave of strength in us, which would make it impossible for Dyer and Frank Johnson to heap a frown upon India's devoted head. It matters little to me that for the moment I do not drive my point home, with fear too downtrodden not to be angry and revengeful. But I must not refrain from the saying that India can gain more by waiving the right of punishment. We have better work to do, a better mission to deliver to the world. I'm not a visionary. I claim to be a practical idealist. The religion of nonviolence is not meant merely for the religious in sense. It is meant for the common people as well. Nonviolence is the law of our species. Its violence is the law of the brute. The spirit lies dormant in the brute, and he knows no law but that of physical might. The dignity of man requires obedience to a higher law, to the strength of the spirit. I have therefore ventured to place before India the ancient law of self-sacrifice. For Telegraph and his offshoots, non-cooperation and civil resistance are nothing but new names for the law of suffering. The writers who discovered the law of non-violence in the midst of non-violence were greater geniuses than Newton. They were themselves greater warriors than Wellington. Having themselves known the use of arms, they realized their uselessness and taught the weary with that is salvation but through non-violence. Non-violence in its dynamic condition means conscious suffering. It does not mean meek submission to the will of the evildoer, but it means the putting of one's whole sword against the will of the tyrant. It is working under this law of being. It is possible for a single individual to defy the whole might of an unjust empire to save his honor, his religion, his sword, and laid the foundation for the empire's fall or his regeneration. And so I'm not pleading for India to practice nonviolence because it is weak. I want her to practice non-violence, being conscious of her strength and power. No training in arms is required for realization of her strength. We seem to need it because we seem to think that we are but a lump of flesh. I want India to recognize that she has a sword that cannot perish and that can rise triumphant above every physical weakness and defy the physical combination of the whole world. What is the meaning of Rama? A mere human being with his host of monkeys, pitting himself against the insolent strength of 10-headed raven, surrounded in supposed safety by the raging waters on all sides of Lanka. Does it not mean the conquest of physical might by spiritual strength? However, being a practical man, I do not wait until India recognizes the practicability of the spiritual life in the political world. India considers herself to be powerless and paralyzed before the machine guns, the tanks, and the airplanes of the English, and she takes our non-cooperation out of her weakness. It must deal with the same purpose, namely, bring her delivery from the crushing weight of British injustice if a sufficient number of people practice it. It would not fail through its inherent weakness. It may fail because of the poverty of response. Then would be one time for real danger, the high sword men, who are unable to suffer national humiliation any longer, will want to vain their watch. They will take to violence. So far as I know, they must perish without delivering themselves or their country from the wrong. If India takes out the doctrine, the sword, she may gain monetary victory. momentary victory. Then India will cease to be the pride of my heart. I'm wedded to India because I owe my all to her. I believe absolutely that she has a mission for the world. She is not to copy Europe blindly. India's acceptance of the doctrine of the sword will be the hour of my trial. I hope I shall not be found wanting. My religion has no geographical limits. If I have a living faith in it, it will transcend my love for India herself. My life is dedicated to service of India through the religion of non-violence, which I believe to be the root of Hinduism. Meanwhile, I urge those who distrust me not to disturb the even working of the struggle that has just commenced by inciting to violence in the belief that I want violence. Let them give non-violence, non-cooperation a trial, and they will find that I had no mental reservation whatsoever. 这一集念到这里啊，希望对你的发音有一点帮助。